frustrating for everybody. It's frustrating for the investigative team, it's frustrating for us, and it's particularly frustrating for the family and friends of Molly.
Iowa Department of Public Safety's Kevin Winker says investigators are searching by ground and air in hundreds of leads. Molly Tibbetts was last seen jogging July 18th in Brooklyn, Iowa. The family hoping the massive reward being offered will incentivize the right tip that could blow this case wide open. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
Americans who attend church regularly say they go to get closer to God, and more than a third of those who attend only a couple of times a year say they practice their faith in other ways. AFN Steve Jordahl has more.
81% of those who go to church at least twice a month say they always or often experience God's presence when they attend, according to Pew Research. Almost 7 in 10 say they go to church so their kids will have a moral foundation. But the study found church attendance in general continues to decline. American Family Association's Ed Vitagliano says the pace of life is the main cause.
I think busyness has begun to cause a lot of deterioration in terms of the spiritual lives of Americans, but it is also doing other things to family life and so on and so forth. So I'm not really surprised that that would cause at least some drawback from church.
But even those who do not attend church regularly say they're hanging on to spirituality. 37% of them say they practice their faith in other ways.
Some people are not going to church because they consider themselves spiritual rather than religious. And what that says to me is that individualism in America is still very important, but it is undermining concepts such as community.
He says the way to guard against getting so busy you start missing church, get busy at church.
When you are serving on the other side of that act, it does flip a switch. It does change us in a way that just receiving doesn't accomplish.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
In final news this hour, Movie Pass, a discount service for movie tickets at theaters, is walking back a planned 50% price hike following a subscriber backlash, but it will soon impose a cap of 3 movies per month instead of 1 every day. Movie Pass has grown to 3 million subscribers from about 20,000 since it slashed monthly rates nearly a year ago to $10 from as high as $50.
Abraham Hamilton III.
God put us in this world at this time to be salt and light. We don't fold because of the darkness that we're facing. This is not the first time in the world's history that it's gotten dark. God has called you and I to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment.
Tune in to the Hamilton Quarter, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The hoax is the idea that the Trump campaign was the beneficiary of a concerted effort together with the Russians to affect the 2016 election.
Dianne Feinstein had a Chinese spy as her driver for 20 years. And she's leading the Russian investigation, if that's what you call it. How about she's leading the Russian witch hunt. That's something. Isn't that something?
I think a lot about the Democratic Party nationally and how it seems that connection to people, where they are, what their experiences are, their struggles, their hurts and their pain, how we seem to have lost our way.
You're going to have less taxes, more military funding, more border security, and more jobs. That's the choice that you face. It couldn't be more clear.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Hey, welcome to Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. It's my pleasure to be with you and our new expanded audience, which includes American Family Radio. We have a jam-packed program for you today. We're going to be speaking with Jeanine Pirro of Fox News about her new book, holding it up for all of the live streamers, liars, leakers, and liberals. The Case Against an Anti-Trump Conspiracy. It's by Jeanine Pirro. She's a Fox News host, and she's going to join us in the next segment. And then later on in the third segment, we're going to be speaking to Tim Todd, and he's going to be with us talking about the Truth for Youth. That's this entire week. We're going to be talking about that, and it's a pleasure to have him on for the first hour of the show. We're going to be talking about the 2 ways to order your free Bible and wristband. You can call 1-800-733-4737. That's 1-800-733-4737 between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Central. Or you can go to truthforyouth.com to order anytime. You can hear more about this. We're going to be talking about it. I'm mentioning it throughout the show. It's important for us this week. We're partnering with Engage Magazine, and we're really excited about that. So if you're just tuning into the program, welcome. Glad to be with you on a Monday. Happy Monday to you. Sliding in from the weekend. And you're probably thinking, what am I hearing right now? The dulcet tones of who? It's Stacy Washington. So you can go to stacyontheright.com and see my bio there. Briefly, I was a stay-at-home mom and volunteer, and I did a lot of work in our school district, which ended up kind of catapulting me onto school board. And in between there, I did a speaking engagement at a Tea Party rally under the Arch, and that was back in, I think, 2010. And from there, I ended up going into radio and doing a lot of activism. In addition to being an elected school board member and an Air Force veteran, I ended up doing weekly radio on a morning show here that led to a weekend program of my own, that led to a daily show on Urban Family Talk, that led me to this moment where the first hour of that program is now being carried on American Family Radio. I'm a Christian, conservative, dyed in the wool, really, because my parents, although they're Democrats, raised us very conservatively, my sister and I. And my husband and I, our first votes were for Bill Clinton. I'm just telling you the truth here. But during the time that I was, practicing my liberal fervor, I was single, on active duty in the Air Force, and I really didn't have much skin in the game other than serving my country. And when my husband and I got married and moved to the Midwest, I started listening to Christian radio while I was caring for our oldest child, and the transformation began right then. When I tried to match up my political beliefs with what the Bible says, it wouldn't fit. And so I started to examine what I really wanted our home to be like and what I wanted our daughter, at the time we just had her, to grow up learning and understanding about faith and having a biblical worldview. And unbeknownst to me, the same transformation was happening with my husband through some coworkers at his work, and also from him just listening to radio to and from going to the job and all of that. And so we ended up at the same place around the same time and discovered that we'd both been secretly harboring conservative viewpoints, listening to the radio in the car. So from then on, we've pretty much been rock solid. We, of course, lived in the city of St. Louis for a little while. And during that time, we did vote for Democrats, the most conservative Democrats we could find, because we wanted to participate, and Republicans are not really on the general ballot in the city of St. Louis. But when we moved to the suburbs, we started phone banking for George Bush and so on and so forth. And since then, we've been really walking the walk and understanding why we're here to, we have something we're here to do, every one of us. And so if you're listening to this show, it's not by accident. You're called to do something amazing for Christ. You're the hands and feet of our Father in heaven, and you're going to get something done for him. And what I want to do on this show is I want to bring together that intersection of faith and politics and so many other things that come together in that special dynamic that we get to participate in, because we live in the freest, most liberated nation on the face of this planet. And while we may not be a Christian nation, we as Christians are able to participate freely and openly in the political processes that bring us to where we are every day. And politics is the means, it's the mechanism, it's how we get things done. It's not the end all, it's not the be all. It's the biblical worldview that keeps us rooted and grounded and allows us to be fully engaged with our faith. And so we're going to be talking about a lot of fantastic things. We'll always have guests, and we will always have an opportunity to have callers. We'll usually take callers at the end of the first hour, and we'll just be having a really great time here on the show. And you can reach out to me via my website, stacyontheright.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. It's at stacyontheright on all of that. I welcome your feedback, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The haters always manage to get some emails and messages in as well. And I don't mind, you know, you can send whatever you want. It's not going to stop me. I've had my fair share. I'm a Second Amendment supporter, gun owner, all that good stuff. And while I don't work for the NRA, I definitely support them and the mission that they have to make sure that people who are gun owners are able to freely practice their Second Amendment rights. So all of that and more you're going to hear on the Stacey on the Right show every day on American Family Radio. I want to say thanks to the leadership at AFR and AFA and Urban Family Talk for putting their trust in me to give me this opportunity. I am so excited about it. And so right now I want to delve into, we have some more time left in this first segment. I'm absolutely flabbergasted. So I just explained to you how we kind of moved to the Midwest, and I don't really think it was the locale that was the change. It was our family change after getting married, and we were married for a few years before we actually had our first child. That's when we started to see things differently. When you start paying more in taxes and you start having to balance your tax burden with what you're actually able to spend on your family, and you start to see that place where you have only a finite amount of resources that you're paid by your employer. And then you have the federal government coming in and they get their cut before the money hits your bank account. They've already extracted their cut. You have to pay for medical insurance, you have to pay for your bills. And then after that, you still want to have a life. And when you see how much of the government is funded by your portion, and then you see what they're doing with it, the waste, the fraud, the abuse, there's plenty of fantastic things the government does, but it's too big, it's too large. Then you start to kind of say, well, which of these parties is going to protect me? Which of these parties is going to at least give me an opportunity to spend more of what I have? And it's pretty clear. The Democrats would like to take up to 95% of your income, depending on how rich you are and how much they think you deserve it based on your demographics and how many of their victimhood boxes you can check. Meanwhile, the Republicans, while they're kind of like slow Democrats in some ways, they at least believe on the fiscal side that you deserve to keep as much of your money as can possibly be negotiated with the thuggish, ruggish Democrats. So it was interesting to me when I was listening to a little bit, catching up on the news, and I heard some audio from Joe Lieberman. Now, he's an independent, but he caucuses with the Democrats. He's of Jewish extraction, and he has previously been at home with the Democrats, if you will, but they've moved so far to the left and become so radical that he's not even sure what's going on with them anymore. And so I found it interesting that he kind of echoes things that my husband and I and so many others that we know who are in our friend group who were once Democrats but left that party because it doesn't fit just normal people. It's too much activism, too much violence, too many weird groups like Occupy Wall Street, Antifa, all of these protest groups that the violence is their aim, their chants are violent, their whole ethos is to tear down what exists in America today and remake it in the form of some other country, which, by the way, you're always free to immigrate with an E right on out of here to one of these more, socialist countries that you may like. So Lieberman talks about how the radicalization of the Democrats really upsets people like him, which it's interesting. It's more and more people who are like him, and I'm hoping it'll be a complete transformation because we need two parties and we need Democrats for balance. But I'm talking about more like the common sense blue dog Democrats of old, as opposed to this new iteration that is really frightening for everyone. It's number 6.
Look, our politics has been in turmoil for too many years now, and it's gotten, increasingly partisan. People treat their political party like it was a tribe, and they have to be loyal to it, and they decide what they believe about issues based on the tribe they belong to rather than what they think about the issue or the problem. And the result is, very little is getting done in Washington. The president is able to do some things by regulation or executive order, which this president is, and they have a certain latitude in foreign policy. But, ultimately, this is part of why I think Donald Trump was elected president, because even though people were not sure what he would be like, and he was so different than anybody who had ever been president before, people wanted a change.
And so the change that was promised with Barack Obama, the hope and change, the vague, nebulous distraction type tactic, it was really a marketing tool. How do you sell something that you're not really sure if it has benefits or it does what you say it does? Well, you sell it around a concept that is undefinable so that people can't hold you accountable for whatever they get after they've bought in. And that's what happened to so many Americans who bought in the first go round with Barack Obama. It was hope and change. They weren't sure what they were hoping for. They weren't sure what change they were going to get. They were just promised that, racism would be eradicated, that there'd be no more unexplainable weather events, that, the polar ice caps would go back to their normal shape. There was all kinds of crazy, almost wackadoodle promising being made. And it was all placed inside of this beautiful package, which I have to say, it was difficult. Being I happen to be of the permanent tan, and it was so wonderful to see a intact black family, the Obamas, husband, wife, and kids, and the family that they represented. Because so often liberal Hollywood media, they don't put intact black families up there for us to see. They always put whatever deviant behaviors and anything that isn't mainstream, they tack that onto the black characters, and that's how they get blacks into television and movies, etc. And so it was nice to see. But in the end, promises made, well, it was kind of promises kept, because we weren't really promised anything tangible. And then after Barack Obama took office and rode in on his steed, ready to save us all, we began to notice a little bit of a pattern. A lot of lies about Obamacare, about Benghazi, about the economy, about just racial unity in general. If there was anything he could do to spread racial animus, that's what he did, instead of drawing the country together and pointing to the 85% of our experiences that are identical because we're all human beings and because we're Americans, instead of pointing to the rich cultural heritage that we have as Americans because of our founding and then immigration and then the eradication of slavery and then more immigration, and how our country is not only unique, but uniquely special in our relationships, because you don't have to be any race or background. You don't have to have a certain economic status. In some countries, you can't immigrate unless you have a certain amount of money and property that you own to show that you won't be a burden on their economy and that you can come in at the top. Not so in America. You need only want to be an American. And instead of him pointing to that and pointing to his own history, his own interesting backstory, to try to draw Americans together and bring us to a place where we could really experience some unity, he continued to drive home the wedge of division that really has brought us to a place now where we're factionalized, we're fractured. There's an answer for that. True unity comes in knowing Jesus Christ and seeing yourself from God's perspective. And that's something that we'll discuss more and more here on the program. But for right now, I hear the music. We're going to go to the commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to have Jeanine Pirro of Fox News. And we're going to be talking about her book. It's Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. I've got it right here for you. I'm going to be asking her questions directly from these pages. And we'll also discuss other things, whatever we can squeeze into one segment. So, StacyOnTheRight.com, AFR.net, UrbanFamilyTalk.com. All of those websites right there for you. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Hi, I'm Will Addison.
And I'm Miki Addison of Airing the Addisons on Urban Family Talk. Family is so important to everything. I mean, think about it. Right after God created Adam, he made family by creating Eve as his wife.
We'd like to invite you to the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference this summer. We'll have a full slate of experts to help encourage and equip the body of Christ to fight for the restoration of the family.
Our speakers include Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation, Dr. Clarence Schuler of Building Lasting Relationships, Abraham Hamilton III, Pastor Bert Harper and his wife Jan, and more.
We'll even be there.
The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference will be Friday and Saturday, August 17th and 18th at Hope Church in Tupelo, Mississippi. Come help us fight back against the enemy's direct attack on marriage and family. That's the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference, put on by Urban Family Communications, a division of the American Family Association. You can learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. Randy Alcorn, in his powerful little book, The Treasure Principle, rightly states that giving is a barometer of our spiritual maturity. In fact, some years ago, a friend of mine who is executive pastor of a large church told me that there was a noticeable correlation between what God has done in the lives of the church members and what they put in the offering plate. Part of our problem in the Christian life, I think, is that we segment our lives. We say, this is what I give, this is what I do at home, and this is what I do at church, and this is what I do in the community. But true spirituality demonstrates that all we have and all we are belong to God. There's no segmentation with God. I was reminded of this as I read 2 Chronicles chapter 31, verse 10. And Azariah said to him, since the contributions began to be brought into the house of the Lord, we have had enough to eat with plenty left over. For the Lord has blessed his people, and this great quantity is left over. He says, these people are giving primarily because God has touched their hearts. We've got too much. Isn't that a great problem to have? Their generosity was a work of the Spirit of God in their midst. Let me ask you a question. How grateful are you for what God has done and is doing in your life? Does your checkbook indicate your gratitude? Here's what I want you to remember and do today. Randy Alcorn's book, The Treasure Principle, has had a profound impact on me. We all need to embrace the message that he underscores of generosity, of sacrifice, and not segmenting our lives. Take a look at your stewardship. It's not part of your life. It is all of your life.
Thanks, Crawford, and thank you for listening to today's Legacy Moment, a production of Moody Radio, a ministry of Moody Global Ministries.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program, and it is my pleasure to welcome here on the program for the first time, hopefully one of many opportunities for us to speak with the judge, Judge Jeanine Pirro, author of the new best-selling book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. Judge, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. I'm thrilled to be on with you.
Okay, so I got to say, you know, I've seen you on TV so many times, and you are so, like, you're hard-hitting, you're so direct, and you have drilled every issue down for when your show comes on. I know I'm going to get that open where you just lay everything out, and you take no prisoners. So I'm hoping for that right now because I have your book in my hand, and I've got the people who are watching the live stream, you guys can see I'm holding the book up, and I've got all my little yellow stickies out. I don't even have enough time to ask you all the questions I want to get to, but I have to say.
Well, I'm thrilled. I mean, look, I've been a prosecutor, judge, and DA for 30 years. I've run for office 5 times. So I am looking forward to your questions. We'll drill right down, whatever you need.
Well, let's get to, first off the bat, why did you write the book? And I always ask authors that because there's usually a specific moment where you were like, I got to get this. Why'd you write it?
Well, you know, as you said yourself, every weekend on my show, Justice, on Fox, I do an open, something I'm passionate about. You know, it's not just the news. It's not just whatever. It's something that winds me up. And so, you know, I kept writing a book, writing opens about what was going on with the DOJ and the FBI. And as someone, you know, who has revered the law and spent her life, you know, in the trenches fighting for truth and justice and the silent victims of crime, you know, I just couldn't get over what was happening every day, what we were learning. And it was just too much for an open. I needed to write a book so I could make it clear what is going on in our justice system and how Lady Justice, who's supposed to be blind, you know, was directed in one direction in the Hillary Clinton case and another in teeing up a non-existent collusion on the part of Donald Trump and the Russians.
Okay, so and that's right along the lines of segueing to my first question about the actual book. And so in chapter 2 is entitled Lying, Liberal, Fake News, and Fiction. And under the subheading Street Injustice, you talk about, so on your show, Justice with Judge Jeanine, you have this segment called Street Justice. And you go out to the streets, right, and you ask people questions. And usually you stick close to Fox News, but sometimes you travel around. And you share a little bit about an incident where you were down at a park very close to NYU, and you're getting this great funny footage, and then you've got this kid who's a student who's behind you. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, what happened was I was talking to them about this whole idea of snowflakes and triggering and what was going on, what it meant. Well, I apparently triggered a few snowflakes because they came out in droves to shut me down. Every time I tried to talk to someone, they would yell and scream, fake news, Fox News, FU. I mean, I can't say it. But right in your face. Now, understand, I always have security, the cameraman, the producer with me, and, my security was still a big concern. And the only issue for me was, I kept trying to talk to them. They didn't want to talk. It was like, I'm not interested in what you have to say. You work for Fox, and that's all I need. So at one point, a kid came up with the group, and he said, look, I'm a conservative. I think Donald Trump's doing a great job, but I have to do this, because I'll get bad grades and I won't have any friends. Oh. And then all of a sudden he started yelling, Fox News, fake news, and it was schizophrenic on his part. But he was trying to send a message that, look, no matter what they say, a lot of us aren't convinced that the left, is doing a right job by shutting everyone down and by saying that the right is fascist, when in truth the left is fascist, because fascism only accepts one way of thinking, one train of thought, and if you veer from it, you're in big trouble.
Wow. So in a land as free as our own, we have our college students. They don't really feel free. They don't have the liberty to be on the opposing political view. If you're not a Democrat, you can't have friends. You can't be popular on campus. You can't do the things you might want to do in college. That's an indictment. And I don't see anyone on the left willing to acknowledge it.
Well, they're not willing to acknowledge it. In fact, if you saw me on The View a couple of weeks ago, they're willing to do it on live national television, ABC, the way they did to me, by screaming me down and yelling at me, and Whoopi Goldberg just pushing off from the desk and saying, that's it, goodbye. And then when I got downstairs leaving right away, she then said, F you, and get the F out of the building. Now, I'm with my team, and they were mortified. I mean, they didn't know what to do. The young people, and they've never seen anything like this. Not that, I grew up in this kind of a setting, but, I know my way around a courtroom pretty well, and I've sat on the bench a long time. And as far as I'm concerned, if they're willing to do that in front of the country, they have no problem shutting you down in silence. Or, what we're seeing with the cabinet members, but Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who's a spokesperson for the president, and then Kirstjen Nielsen, Secretary of Homeland Security. I mean, people are being approached who are on the right and yelled at, cursed at, and they're being told shame or get out. We don't want you here. This is not the America that you and I love and adore. And I think, and that's, again, one of the reasons I wrote the book. It's time for us to get out there and let everyone know that this country is precious and it's worth saving. And, the left has just about lost its mind.
They really have. And you brought up some really great examples that are recent. And I watched with horror. The news clips came out almost immediately after your appearance. And I watched the behavior of the women on The View. And I think what really enraged them, Judge, and if you're just tuning in, welcome to the show. I'm speaking with Judge Jeanine Pirro of Fox News and also author of the new book, bestseller already, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. And so, Judge, what I noticed about it is that people who wrote stories about what happened to you, they didn't write about the poor behavior of Whoopi Goldberg or how she lost control. And we're all human. Anyone can lose control. But she didn't just lose control and then realize, oh, wow, I could have handled that better. She was actually belligerent afterwards. When we saw part 2 of the story where she got in your face and basically threw you out of the building, and your reaction, which, you could have taken almost any reaction at that point. I mean, she'd given you carte blanche to, lose control as well. Instead, you very graciously said, well, I mean, it's your building, and you exited. But afterwards, I didn't see news media people like Jim Acosta saying how horrible it was that you were treated that way, the same way he feels he should be given kid gloves by the president.
Yeah. Well, what happened to me, and I never got an apology, by the way. And it's interesting that Meghan McCain, who sat to my left or on the right of the screen as you were looking at the segment, and of course you can get it, you can Google it on YouTube. When
Joy Behar.
It doesn't matter. When they stormed off, Meghan McCain kept mouthing, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry," and I'm not happy at that point. I am ripping my microphone off, and then the next day I hear Meghan McCain said, "Oh, I support Whoopi," but they threw me and my staff out, and she followed me with "Get the F out, get the F out," and on my show that weekend, and again, you Google this too, I talked about what's happening, but I did it in a very calm way where, this has to stop. We have to listen to each other, and, that I liked Whoopi, and that's why I went on the show. I mean, I don't have any feelings that, oh, she's on the left, I hate her, the way they look at us. And I think the sales of the book, number one on the New York Times bestsellers list, is basically support for me. The book obviously already won on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all that. But once the Whoopi thing happened, I think people on the right dug in and they said, this is not right, and we're going to buy the book. Even if we weren't going to buy the book, we're going to buy it now.
Well, it's at my Barnes & Nobles where I went to purchase it. It's right on the front table. That's where they put the books that are selling the best, the ones that everyone's looking for. I walked right in, 10 feet inside the front door. Your book was lower left corner of the and stacked up high, and a little one stood up in the front where I could grab it right off the bat.
Interesting.
I thought that was interesting too because they're often really kind of negative. They try to put the books in the back and all that, but it was right in front. Yeah, and I also think, just as an aside before we transition to that, because I want to talk about the fake news awards in your book. I think the problem was that you came on and instead of being meek, you were yourself. They knew what to expect, but they thought you were going to come in and play nice and let them run all over you. And when they didn't get that reaction, and when you said, you kind of gave a little finger point over to Whoopi, she did not even try to control herself. And I have to say, she's not unprofessional every day. I've seen her lose it before, but I was surprised at how fully she just released any inhibitions that allowed herself to let go. And it really, I know a lot of people on Twitter were saying, she deserved it. But I think real Americans, Democrats and Republicans alike, that's why the book's doing so well, because they really, they felt like that was beyond the pale. And it was, in my opinion. And I'm glad that you stood, you were able to take it.
It's interesting. And when I hear people say I deserved it, I think anyone who's objective should just look at the YouTube. But the first segment, which was fine. It was fine. They never got to the book. I mean, it was all about, Donald Trump and all that, and they never got to the book. Second segment, that's when the wheels came off. And, Meghan McCain had asked me a question to my left, and then I turned around and with my body, I went to Whoopi and I said, no, I want to answer her question. It wasn't pointing in a derogatory way. I just said to Meghan, if you watch it, you'll see me go from Meghan and I just say I want to answer Whoopi. And, they can interpret it whatever way they want. But the truth is that it was a microcosm of what goes on in America every day. And I'm telling you, it's going to get worse. The Antifa, the people who will not tolerate those of us on the right who support the president, who are glad unemployment is down, glad that, ISIS has been, defeated in the Middle East. I mean, if you think about it, 2 years ago, we were all worried. Someone was going to with a butcher knife and yell, Allah Akbar, and cut our heads off. We don't even think about it anymore. Because Donald Trump is the president.
It is. That's the only reason. And so we have just enough time for me to get one more question. And I have so many, Judge, but I'm going to go with Chapter 4, subtitle, America Last. And in here, you do not play. You're taking crying comrade Chuck Schumer. I mean, you talk about a lot of different things here, but you talk about the 7 nations and the restriction on immigration, which we were told when our governors were protesting and kind of voicing concerns about immigrants being dumped in their states. we were told, well, Barack Obama controls immigration because that rests with the presidency per Congress. If you don't like it, take it up with your congressperson. But now that it's Donald Trump, it's racism, it's this, it's that. America last. Take us home. We have about just a couple of minutes left.
Well, if what you're asking is, why is this legal under Barack Obama but racist under Donald Trump, is that basically what the question is?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. I just want you, I know we only have a couple of minutes. I want to be real clear. What I drill down on this? The answer is that they hate Donald Trump, so anything he does is racist, sexist. I mean, forget that he has more women, working at higher positions in the White House, from Kellyanne to Sarah Sanders to Nikki Haley to Hope Hicks, and it goes on, and I list them in the book. But when federal judges, and this is why the Supreme Court appointment is so important, when federal judges decide that they're going to be activists, and they say, look, this is racism because they were appointed by another president, and they're changing the whole conversation, then it's time for us to realize how important the bench is. It goes to the Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court says this is constitutional and justified under the plenary powers of the president. These judges who tried to make it look like activist judges, they tried to make it look like Trump is a racist. I mean, they just showed their own card. In truth, the president did everything that Obama did. And, in fact, I think Obama had even had more, and I'm not sure about that, but had more individual countries that President Trump took out. But that's not the point. The point is resist and obstruct. And we need to get that 2018 is essential to this president and his keeping America safe and economically secure and our religious freedom. And I'm going to end on this. Thank God I live in a country where I can write this book. Thank God I still have the freedom of speech and my God-given rights that they want to change. And if anyone doesn't, if you don't want to see little pictures of the poor dragged up to the United States Supreme Court because an administration doesn't believe in religious freedom, we've got to get out there on 2018. And it's the most important thing that we can do going forward to secure our rights and the America that we believe and that our forefathers that created for us.
Perfect ending. I can tell you do television, Judge Jeanine Pirro. The book is Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. It has been a pleasure to talk to you. Good luck with everything, and see you on Sunday night. All right, we'll be back with more right after this. Go to afr.net and hit the subscribe button.
Out of all the people in the world, we've all done or will do the following: be birthed into this earth, grow, go to school, maybe go to college, get married, have kids, grow old, and die. Doesn't sound too eventful when put in that perspective. For many, the thought of discipling someone is foreign from the mind and not even on the to-do list. In Matthew chapter 28, verse 19, Jesus tells us to go ye therefore, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. A disciple is more than a student. He or she is a follower of Jesus Christ. There are a lot of things in this world, but there's nothing like being a Christian. It's a life filled with adventures. Receiving an education, vacationing, marriage, having kids are good, but there's nothing like taking the time to nourish someone in God's word so that they can be a force to be reckoned with. That is priceless. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Victory McIntosh. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Hi, I'm Will Addison.
And I'm Miki.
From Airing the Addisons on Urban Family Talk.
We'd like to invite you to the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference coming up August 17th and 18th.
The list of speakers is amazing. We have Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation, Dr. Clarence Schuler of Building Lasting Relationships, Abraham Hamilton III, Pastor Bert Harper and his wife Jan, Stacy Washington, Lonnie Poindexter, Pastor Dexter Sanders, and we'll be there too.
There's a direct attack by the enemy on marriage and family, and babies in the womb are treated like political footballs instead of life. We want to encourage and equip the body of Christ to fight for the restoration of the family. If we can get our families on track, a lot of society's problems could be solved. The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference is from Urban Family Communications, a division of the American Family Association. You can learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Securing America.
The director of national intelligence recently said the thought of a cyber 9/11 is what keeps him up at night. An attack so severe it cripples banking or energy infrastructure. So who will protect us from such attacks?
We are having to prepare our kids for jobs that do not exist today. And the foundation of all future jobs is going to be some basic coding.
Texas Republican Congressman Will Hurd said the skills gap is hurting that foundation.
A couple years ago in Texas, there were 42,000 jobs that required some kind of computing that went unfilled. The problem was in Texas that same year, we only produced 2,100 computer scientists.
Frank Hall is a cyber patriot coach in San Antonio, a program that's trying to fix that by partnering with mostly high schools to educate kids in cyber defense.
We're teaching them how what's called system hardening. We're trying to prevent a hacker, make it more difficult for them to gain access to either the network or to the computer.
He says all schools need to be teaching kids more computer and coding skills. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
So glad to be back with you. It's my pleasure to welcome our next guest on the program. We're slamming and jamming, moving quickly through the show. And very happy to speak with Tim Todd, Revival Fires International. And we're talking about this fantastic book, Truth for Youth. I'm holding a copy up so you guys can get a look at it on the live stream. Let me give you just a little bit more. Dr. Tim Todd, President and Executive Director of Revival Fires International, bringing the message of the gospel to America's youth and countering the ill effects of the liberal agenda being promoted aggressively in America's public schools. This is right up my alley as a former school board member. Tim, thank you for joining the show today.
Stacy, I am honored to talk to Stacy. You are a mighty woman of God, and I want you to know that I really appreciate your conservative stand, and God has opened up some tremendous doors for you, and I'm honored to be here on the program with you.
It's mutual, sir. I'm looking at the book. So what they do is I got a copy of the book last week, and I was flipping through it, and it's kind of genius because you have the style of the beginning of the book. It's broken into sections, and so it covers a number of topics, but it's all in, it's this kind of new form of comic book drawing,
Japanese manga.
Yeah, the Japanese manga, which I have one at home who's into that. She reads like 1,000 books a year, and I'd say maybe 30% of it is manga. And so we're constantly at the bookstore and the library trying to get new things. Now, obviously, I'm hoping her Christian worldview is pretty well formed. She's in Christian school and all of that.
Absolutely.
But this is the kind of stuff that the hook for kids who maybe haven't had as much opportunity to go to church, or maybe their parents don't read the Bible to them, or they don't really have a Christian worldview. The hook is that this book, it's smaller, it's light. It's right in that same genre. It fits into the hand and everything like the manga books do. And you flip it open and you start right off with this scene at a football game, and it's actually well written. It's good stuff. I let her take a look at it. She was like, "Mom, this is pretty awesome. Where'd you get this?" I'm like, "I got it from American Family Radio." She was like, "What?" So it was pretty cool. Why did you write this? Why did you do this?
You know, Stacy, in 91, our ministry went, we were given approval from the Ministry of Education to put Bibles in Russia as textbooks. And in that first meeting in the Kremlin building, the Minister of Education said, "What kind of a Bible program do you have for the public schools of America?" And I had to hang my head low and say, Russia put God in school, but America kicked God out. And I came back with a burden on my heart that if the young people in Russia can receive Bibles, that the young people in America's public schools should have the same right too. So we developed the Truth for Youth Bible, and of course we update it every year so it stays cutting edge for young people. We've distributed more than 2.5 million copies of this Bible. The plan of salvation is in each of the stories, and we've received decision coupons from more than 25,000 young people that have given their heart to Christ as a a result of getting a copy of the Truth for Youth Bible.
It's a movement. And you know what's so exciting about what you're saying? So when you have teenagers like we do at our house, it's kind of like, I remember being a teenager. I remember what it was like for me. But today's teenagers are in a world that is so different from the one that I was in. And I thought it was pretty rough then. Like as a teenager, I used to think, wow, you know, not many of my friends, a lot go to church, but not really of them are really Christians. And it's difficult because teenagers are much more susceptible to the peer pressure. In the book, not only do you have the keys to salvation, but you have it kind of written out here. It's more than just John 3:16, you know, just read that and be done with it. You really take them through the steps. You say, pray this prayer. There's a website for them to go to. And it covers a lot of the topics that, you know, if you're listening to this, parents, we kind of lull ourselves into a sense of, that's not happening with my kids. You know, they're not looking at pornography. Well, they are, you know, and it's not because they're bad kids. It's because their friends are looking at it because their friends have been exposed to it. And so they're all sharing it. And you cover that in one of the chapters. I mean, it's so well done. I'm so glad that this is our week to share this and to give people an opportunity to get it into their hands. So let's talk about that. How does somebody get a copy of this, or maybe 25 copies or copies for their whole youth group, for the Truth for Youth book? How do they get it?
Stacy, the way that we're doing it this week, and of course we do this all year long as far as making the Bibles available, but this week they can get the Bible free, one Bible per teenager per household, by calling 1-800-733-4737. That number is 800-733-4737, or they can go to truthforyouth.com. And if they want to get additional copies at a very discounted cost, actually it's my cost for the Bible. If they get a case or more, 50 Bibles or more, they get them for only $2 each. And we encourage parents and grandparents and youth groups to get them to have their youth groups to distribute them in their schools. And what's amazing is we put the Bibles into the hands of the young people who will commit to give them to their friends in school that are not saved. So we're making soul winners out of these young people. And then the young people that get the Bible, many of them are giving their heart to Christ. And we're also getting the Word of God back into the public schools of America legally.
Okay, now let's get to one that I think is so relevant for this very day and moment when we're seeing stories on all the major news outlets are talking about Chicago. They had this big march, and you know, Dr. Todd, you know what we're talking about in Chicago.
Yes.
And, you know, we're in the suburbs
Absolutely.
of St. Louis right here. It's the murder. It's the shootings. It's so much of the culture has just degraded down to, you know, we're talking about murder rates that are higher than in Honduras and other third world countries. And so you have this band, and I'm showing it on the live stream here. The band says #6. And it's a black band, so it's kind of cool looking, and it's the rubber kind. You can put it on. You have to take it off. And it's geared towards the kids who get the Truth for Youth book, which is really, it's the comic book in the front and the Bible in the back. And so along with that, we're reaching the kids with this by saying, you know, the 6th commandment, you shall not kill. It's a validation of life. And we want the kids to talk about how they don't want to murder, how they want to be pro-life as kids, as teenagers, by resolving their conflicts, do whatever they have to do not to harm others, not to hurt others, not to be a part of this kind of epidemic of violence that we're experiencing.
Yes, and you know, I believe that one of the reasons why we have the violence that we do in our schools, and I know that Chicago, it is a devastating situation that's going on there with all of the violence and the gang activity that's taking place in the streets and the thousands that are losing their lives. And in our schools, Stacy, I believe that the reason why we're having the violence in our schools, the reason why we're having the epidemic of the drug use, my opinion is that when we kicked God out of our schools in 1962 with Abington v. Shemp, that court case that came before the Supreme Court removing prayer from school, and then 1 year later in 1963 with Engel v. Vitale, and of course you know that was based on the Supreme Court saying that there is a danger that if the Bible is read without explanation, it could cause psychological harm. And with that, they removed God from our schools. And when you remove God from anything, the devil will move in. And so that's what this Bible is all about, is shining the light of the gospel in the darkness and taking back what the devil has stolen.
Okay, so I had to just say a couple things. Let's be real here. We know that was a lie from the pit of hell, because the truth is that the Word of God brings wisdom and knowledge and expertise beyond your years.
Yes.
It actually, it's like a little chamois cloth, you know, with bleach and all the disinfectants, but it's gentle, and it just chamois off the brain and the heart and all the parts that are depraved and wicked, and brings us in line with what God has for us. It enables us to be blessed. I mean, nothing's further from the truth. And you pinpointed, why is there so much violence? Why is there so much sex and degradation? Why are kids turning to drugs? Why are they depressed? They're cutting themselves. Because they're never told that they are made in the image of God, and that He has a plan for their life, and that whatever problems they're facing at home or in their classrooms, that there is a Savior who is intimately interested in every part of their lives, and He wants to be their Savior and work with them and bring them along, that they can rely on Him instead of drugs or friends or boyfriends or sex or what have you. Of course our schools are violent, because kids who don't know who they are, they don't know if they're made in the image of God, they think they're just evolved monkeys. Well, what do you expect?
Yes, and you know, Stacy, what you just said is exactly true. One of the comics, the graphic novels that we have in the Truth for Youth Bible, as you can see, it deals with evolution. And when you start teaching young people in the public school classroom that they evolved from apes, what results from it is that they start behaving like apes, and they have to know that they were made in the image of God. And so that is one of the things that we deal with. And of course, with all of the sex and the violence and the cutting and the sexting, here's what I believe. I believe God does not want them to stop those things and then come to Him. God wants them to come to Him, and He will give them what they need to stop those things. I, at one time, was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and I'm telling you, Stacy, I tried to work it out on my own. My dad had the third longest running Christian program on national television back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So I knew better, but I was doing drugs and alcohol and living a life of sin, and over and over and over, I would try to stop on my own and then come to God. But you can't do that. God wants you to come to Him, and He'll help you stop. And that's what this Bible is all about. It encourages young people to give their life to the Lord, and then God will help them come out of the trappings that they're involved in, the things that are dragging them down.
Absolutely. And so your testimony only strengthens what we've now shared with the listeners and all of the live stream viewers about the book. I want to give a little bit more information about how they can get their hands on. You get your free Bible and wristband by calling 800-733-4737, 800-733-4737, and that's during the day between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. Central. But 24 hours a day, anytime you feel like doing this, you can go to truthforyouth.com, truthforyouth.com, and it's this fantastic graphic novel with the New Testament at the back. I mean, it's just so perfectly sized for kids. These are the size books that most teenagers really, they prefer this size. It's soft cover, not hard cover. It's perfect. It's just like, I know this because we've got the readers here at our house, and I know what they buy. And then we also have this wristband, which is really cool. And it says #6, which is it's in blue, and so black wristband, blue lettering. And when they're wearing this, another kid will say, "What's that?" And they can tell them. It's an opportunity for them to share. Lead us out of this. We still have about 3 minutes, and I want to give those to you to kind of get anything that I've missed, anything else you want to cover about the book or the wristband, anything.
Well, the politically incorrect message is, oh, you can't give Bibles away in school. It's not legal. But, Stacy, the truth is, our young people have the legal right to give Bibles away on campus. And so we've got the students' legal rights on public school campus on the back cover of the Bible. And I put number 4 in bold because it tells the young people that they do indeed have the right to give Bibles away during non-instructional time. And so we encourage young people. You want to make a difference on your school campus? What you can do is help us get God back in our schools by taking the Word of God that has got these comic stories in the front that are relevant for the young people, dealing with cutting, sexting, bullying, pluralism, suicide, things that our young people are confronted with every day, and make an eternal spiritual impact in the lives of the young people that you give those Bibles to.
And I'm going to add to what the good doctor just said here. And if you're just tuning in, you're going to have to go to the podcast to listen to this interview, because this is what I really got involved with political type stuff. This is what brought me to the radio. This is why part of why I do what I do, which is that our kids are just, they're walled off from God in public school, in their clubs, and their sports, everything. You can't pray on the field. You can't gather the kids together to pray. They can't read their Bible. They can't pray over their food at lunch. They can't have Bible studies on campus. All that stuff is false. It's not true. But we let it happen because as parents, we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to be that crazy parent. Well, I'm here to tell you, if you're not going to be that crazy parent, I'm already that crazy parent over here. Be that crazy parent. Rage kitty for Jesus, whatever your favorite animal is, make whatever hashtag you need. If you're not going to be the one to stand up for the kids, then the devil's going to rush in. He's going to do whatever he can do. And he's already out there. It looks like he's winning, but not really. And this is just one way to push back. And when I say that this is so easy to do, we automatically assume that people are going to reject anything that has to do with Jesus Christ, but people are hurting. And anyone who's hurting is waiting for someone who knows the answer to tell them. And if you are a Christian, you know the answer. You have the guidebook, you have the key to success, you have the secret, whatever they call it, the magic wand, you've got it. And now you can have it in a form that kids want to read with this book, Truth for Youth. So I'm going to give you the number one more time. Dr. Pirro, thank you so much for coming on today, Dr. Todd, and sharing with us. It's 800-733-4737, 800-733-4737, or truthforyouth.com. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Stacey, and God bless you.
God bless. We will talk again soon. We are done with Hour 1. Hour 2 is up next. I've got so much good content coming at you. I think it went okay. I'll ask my producer after the show how the hour went. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Thank you for being here today. God bless. You can find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com. We'll be right back after this.
That alternative radio network, because we choose to infuse Jesus in everything we do.
We count it a blessing to be able to speak with integrity and to speak honestly on the issues.
Thank you for joining us, partnering with us, being a part of Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk.
Urban Family Talk, so that we can stand for the gospel.
Truth. Wisdom. Empowered Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News on the Hour, I'm Chris Woodward. They do not always see eye to eye, but Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina says he supports an executive order from President Trump reimposing economic sanctions on Iran.
The Ayatollah is on the ropes, and we need to keep him there. The Iranian people are tired of this regime. They took all the money from the Iran trade agreement, and they spent it on the military, not their people.
In a statement today, President Trump said the 2015 international accord to freeze Iran's nuclear program in return for lifting sanctions was a horrible one-sided deal. And while Trump says it left Iran with money to fuel conflicts around the Middle East, Foreign ministers around Europe say the president's action is illegal under UN sanctions. Tensions are on the rise between Saudi Arabia and Canada. Fox's Benjamin Hall reports from London.
Relations between Saudi Arabia and Canada have taken a sudden turn for the worse after the Canadian Foreign Minister called for the release of detained women's rights activists held by Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia in turn said it is freezing all new trade with Canada and expelling its ambassador over its interference in the kingdom's domestic affairs. A Saudi Foreign Ministry statement said it considered Canada's call last week as a violation of Saudi sovereignty. Canada said it was seeking clarification on the Saudi statement, but a Foreign Ministry spokesman stressed that Canada would always stand up for the protection of human rights, very much including women's rights and freedom of expression around the world.
The move has been seen as a sign that Riyadh will not take criticism of its human rights policies while it undergoes slow-moving reforms under the new Crown Prince. Social media platforms are removing content from a radio host and conspiracy theorist. Fox's Tanya J. Powers reports.
4 of Alex Jones' Facebook pages have been unpublished by the social media site, saying they violate its hate speech and bullying policies. Jones has pushed a number of conspiracy theories, including that 9/11 was an inside job and that the Sandy Hook massacre and Oklahoma City bombing were government hoaxes. Spotify also took every episode of the Alex Jones Show podcast from its streaming platform due, quote, to repeated violations of Spotify's policies. YouTube removed his official channel for the same reasons. This comes as Apple removed 5 of his 6 podcasts from iTunes and its podcast app. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
Evangelicals waded into the choppy waters of same-sex attraction and faith last week. AFN Steve Jordahl reports the Revoice Conference failed to convince most evangelical leaders.
Organizers of Revoice say they want to carve out a place in the evangelical church for those who identify as gay or lesbian, but who want to live out a biblical sexual ethic. In other words, the church needs to make room for celibate, gay-identified Christians. Al Mohler, president of Southern Baptist Seminary, says it is important to recognize that there are those in almost every church that struggle with same-sex attraction.
What we do not want is for Christians struggling with same-sex attractions to feel intimidated so that they can't speak of their unique challenges. But that does not mean that we can identify ourselves, certainly, with some kind of inclination that is contrary to Christ, contrary to Scripture, and contrary to the gospel.
Mohler says there were many troubling aspects of Revoice. Organizers call the focus of the evangelical church on the natural family idolatry and are seeking common ground with secular so-called queer culture. And he warns such thinking has made its way further into evangelicalism than most realize.
The ideology of the LGBT movement is more deeply infectious within many Christian circles than they had recognized. And I think this conference is a wake-up call.
But it is not the answer, he insists.
I think the Revoice Conference is definitely the wrong way for faithful Christians to address these issues.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
And drivers can expect to pay a national average of $2.86 for a gallon of regular gasoline. The bad news is that drivers were paying 50 cents less on this day last year, but the good news, prices have stayed the same for about the last month.
Nothing can get done in the United States Senate for good unless we end the legislative filibuster. We're urging you today to call your senator and ask them to end the legislative filibuster so that we can defund Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in America. Call the Capitol Switchboard at 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121, or go to afaaction.net.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The hoax is the idea that the Trump campaign was the beneficiary of a concerted effort together with the Russians to affect the 2016 election.
Dianne Feinstein had a Chinese spy as her driver for 20 years. And she's leading the Russian investigation, if that's what you call it. How about leading, she's leading the Russian witch hunt. That's something. Isn't that something?
I think a lot about the Democratic Party nationally and how it seems that connection to people, where they are, what their experiences are, their struggles, their hurts and their pain, how we seem to have lost our way.
You're going to have less taxes, more military funding, more border security, and more jobs. That's the choice that you face. It couldn't be more clear.
And now, Stacey Washington.
Oh, yeah. I'm back. It's Monday, and it's still me. All right. Welcome to the program, everybody. It is a lot of content that we have to cover right now. We are going to be really moving quickly through everything today. I want to start off with this wonderful thing we're doing all week long, which is National Truth for Youth Bible Week and our Engage partnership. It's a partnership with Engage Magazine. And we're so excited about this. We just had a fantastic interview with just the first of all, the author of the book. We talked to two authors last hour, Judge Jeanine Pirro, host of her program on Fox News, and then also author of Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. And then after that, like directly after, next segment, we spoke with the author of this wonderful book, and I'm holding it up for you. It's Truth for Youth. It's a graphic novel, and then it has a New Testament on the back. So it's like every parent's dream, because you want to have your kids be entertained and have them be looking at things that are good for them and that they enjoy, but then also to have the Bible on the back for kids who don't have one at home already. Oh my goodness. Or for a kid who maybe they have their Bible, but it's not the one they like looking at. They'd much rather look at this one. Oh, I can tell you they'll much rather, this is just down their alley. So we spoke with Dr. Tim Todd about the book, the reason why he wrote the book. And I want to give you an opportunity. This is free to you, one copy for you for free, along with this fantastic, it's one of those rubber, the cool bracelets, the kind of movement statement bracelets that you can wear. And it has hashtag number 6 on it for the 6th commandment, which is thou shalt not murder. And so the ways to get the free Bible and the wristband, so easy. You can go to truthforyouth.com. It's the easy way. That's 24 hours a day. But if you feel like doing it right this second so you don't forget later, because that's how I am. If I don't write it down on my pad right here, you guys, that's what I'm writing on during the show. If something occurs to me, I have to put it there. And then I can transfer it into my calendar later for the electronics. But lists are very effective. We should do a whole segment on that. They've written books and books and books about how lists are so effective. I want you guys to write this down, truthforyouth.com, or just give a call. Do it now. 800-733-4737, 800-733-4737. That gets you one free Bible and one free wristband. But if you'd like to order more than that, they're just $2 a copy. So if you're in youth ministry, or I know it's the end of the summer, there's only like a week or 2 left, or 3 if you're in the East Coast, you might have until Labor Day. This is a fantastic one to get and give to your late VBS, your late summer VBS kids, or any teens that are volunteering with you or working with you right now until school starts. Get one of these in their hand. They might do what will do often with books is when I'm done with the book, if I haven't marked it up too much, I will then, a friend who I know is looking for something, I'll say, oh, I just read this book and it was so good. And I'll give it to them. And then I'll tell them, don't bother giving it back to me. If you find someone else who's in the same situation and needs this book, just give it to them like I gave it to you. Fantastic way to get this book into the hands of teens who you know who I'm talking about. You know that teen in your life who could benefit from this graphic novel that covers all of these subjects that I would say it's uncomfortable for parents to discuss it, but we can't fall into that trap either. That is something that we're taught, is that we should be ashamed to talk to our kids about sex, or that we can't talk to them about sex or drugs or cutting or pornography, that these subjects are, they're uncomfortable. They're something that parents, you're supposed to tiptoe around it. Do you talk to your kids about mowing the grass and keeping their room clean, about showering and making sure that they're clean and that they wear deodorant? Do you talk to your kids about keeping their laundry clean and, changing their underwear, every time you shower, fresh pair of underwear? If you talk to your kids about these rudimentary, everyday type things, then talking to them about their properly named and assigned body parts and what those body parts are supposed to be doing or not doing in relation to other people should not be outside of what you can say. And our philosophy at our house was, because my parents were much more traditional, and of the era, they're baby boomers. That era is they just let you get sex ed at school in 6th and 8th grade, and then they kind of said don't have sex, and that was the end of the discussions. Well, I started talking to our kids about the proper names of their bodies instead of those silly nicknames, the proper anatomical names of their body parts, the girls and our son. As soon as they started saying, what is this? What is that? Why does my brother have that? We named the parts, and I said, why he has that? Because he's a boy. And you have this because you're a girl. And that's what this is called, and that's what that's called. And it was very matter of fact. And then as we progressed through, and they did have sex ed in public school when they were in public school, we talked about what they watched. I checked the video out and watched it at home so that I knew what they'd seen so we could talk about it. And then later, when they were in Christian school and the teachers would send an email home and say, we discussed this today, it might raise questions. Instead of waiting for the questions, I'd say, hey, they sent me an email. They said you covered this in school today. Do you have any questions? I'm wondering what you thought about that. If you keep the line of communication open, then it's never uncomfortable. Now, if you're coming into this a little, you're thinking, oh, I haven't really talked about cutting or drug use or anything with my kid. It's not too late. They're wondering what you think about it. Teenagers wonder what we think about stuff because they want some direction on which way they should think about it. They've heard plenty from their friends. They might even be grossed out or repulsed by what they've heard from their friends, and they need someone to calm it down and bring it back into reality. And that's you, Mom. That's you, Dad. So I'm an advocate for that. And the only way to know that you can have those conversations with your kids is to have them. Don't think about it too long, because then you won't. Don't. You might ask a girlfriend, do you talk to your, you might, but really that's all just a waste of time. Just bring it up. And it doesn't have to be one of those big productions where it's you and them and you're staring deeply into their eyes. It's more like you pick them up in the car and you're both looking straight out of the front window, and then you just broach it and allow the conversation to progress. And you won't get the whole thing done in one sitting. It's a continuous conversation, just like you don't only go to church once and then that's it. You don't only talk to your kids once about these subjects that have to do with really, it's something that the world wants to talk to them about every minute of every day. Just look around. So we don't have traditional cable or anything like that anymore. We're cord cutters. We cut the cord years ago. And while we were on vacation this last time, it was a couple weeks ago, we went down to Destin like we always do. We stayed in a condo, and the condo came with 2 televisions, one in the living room and one in the master, and it had, cable. So we watched a little bit of regular television. And what I was surprised by is there's a definite decrease in the number of commercials that have babies in them. That's number one. And number two, there's a definite increase in the number of commercials that involve sex in the selling. Burgers, they now need, a hot chick to sell burgers. Pretty much anything that's being sold, they can turn it into a reason to have someone sexually suggestive in the commercial. Now, that's not every channel, and that's not, it's not ubiquitous. Like there's nothing else out there. There were some wholesome commercials, but it's been so long since we had to watch commercials in between programming. It got really frustrating, and we turned it off. But I just took a note of how things are going. If they want to talk to your kids and to you so much about sex, it behooves us as parents to want to talk about not just sex, but drug use, interpersonal relationships, the online social media, and pornography. We have to be willing to talk to our kids about it. If we're not talking to them about it, they've got some friends who are talking to them about it, and I think you probably would be pretty upset with what the friends are sharing. So you want to counterbalance and make sure your children are equipped so that they can not only redirect with friends, hold their own with friends at a bare minimum, but that they are informed so that they're not enticed or titillated by what others might be willing to share with them. So I encourage you to do that. And this is just a really wonderful resource. So I want to make sure that people know where they can get that. It's 800-733-4737 for the Truth for Youth. It's a Bible with a manga-styled comic book series at the front. So cool. 800-733-4737. That's between 8 and 4:30 p.m. The phones will be manned. Otherwise, truthforyouth.com. All right, now I want to, so you might have seen over the weekend, unless you were unplugged like me and you just heard about it early this morning, or if you haven't heard, here it is. Dianne Feinstein, none of her staffers have security clearance. You heard me right. I didn't say none of them have above a secret, because a secret is basically, it's almost nothing. I had that when I was on active duty in the Air Force. I mean, it's like they definitely should all have some kind of security clearance if they're going to be working with her. And she's sitting on, I believe, the Armed Services Committee. I mean, this is like top secret type stuff. So her driver for 20 years, it turns out that this guy was a, how can I say this? He was a spy. He was infiltrating her campaign apparatus and her entire, her office for the purpose of reporting back. Now, after investigating, I guess they found that he didn't get anything of note. I don't know how he's like running around. She forced him to retire. And this was news, so this is not something that's totally new right now, but it's coming back up because of all of the different things that are going on. So I've got this audio bit here, and it's talking about, and this is mainstream news, which I thought was pretty interesting that they were reporting on this, talking about how this Chinese spy infiltrated Feinstein.
The Spy Who Drove Me sounds like the title of a James Bond movie. Instead, it's a rip from the headlines reality from Politico and the San Francisco Chronicle about Senator Dianne Feinstein. First, Politico revealed that a Feinstein staffer was a Chinese spy. Then, in Mateer and Ross, more. Citing an unnamed source, the column revealed the Chinese spy was Feinstein's driver for 20 years, who also served as a gopher in her Bay Area office and was a liaison to the Asian American community. He even attended Chinese consulate functions for the senator. Senator Feinstein was the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee at the time and was reportedly mortified when the FBI told her she'd been infiltrated. KPIX5 security analyst Jeff Harp, former assistant special agent in charge of the San Francisco FBI office, says he isn't surprised the San Francisco senator was targeted.
If you think of the number of government employees there are that are in positions of trust and confidence, anybody that sits on the Senate Intelligence Committee, they all have a top secret security clearance and even higher. And those people are all prime targets of opportunity. This is no different than what we would do on foreign soil to try to recruit those same individuals into our intelligence network.
Oh, yeah. So this is it's not beyond the pale. It's not a shock. It's not the first time this has ever been attempted and completed, and certainly won't be the last. But the point is that, when I one of my favorite slogans is scratch a scandal, find a Democrat. She's been busy pointing the fingers at Donald Trump when in reality, she can't even keep her own house clean. She doesn't have her business in order. So we're going to go out of this segment with the rest of the audio of Jeff Harp. That's the voice you just heard. With all of that experience he has leading, portion of the FBI and counterintelligence and all that. He says the Bay Area is a target for espionage.
The investigation concluded that the driver hadn't leaked anything substantial, and Feinstein forced him to retire. Feinstein isn't the only target of spy games in the Bay.
So the Bay Area has a unique position in the espionage community. There's a lot of what you want to call industrial espionage, and also people who are in positions of trust and confidence within high corporations.
It was just last month when a former Apple engineer was arrested for trying to take the company's autonomous car secrets to China. And remember the papal-like puffs of black smoke coming out of the Russian consulate in Pacific Heights last September? Right next to an odd array of communications towers? Harp says kicking those so-called diplomats out of the country hasn't slowed espionage.
Just because we shut the Russian consulate does not mean that the Russians are no longer interested in what goes on here in the Bay Area. China the same way. The Chinese approach things from a little bit different, but they also have an interest in, the economy here, how to get political influence here.
Now, Feinstein's office says they do not comment on personnel matters and that no one here in the California office has security clearance.
Wow. All right. That's first segment of hour 2 of Stacey on the Right. We're going to be back talking about MSNBC mocking Americans on socialism and what socialism
Hi, I'm Kevin Sorbo. You may know me from my TV series Hercules or Andromeda, or one of my hit films such as Let There Be Light, God's Not Dead, or What If. I wanted to invite you to offer your full support for the Ministry of Preborn and its leader, Dan Steiner. The team at Preborn is very focused and very successful at saving preborn babies from abortion.
The Ministry of Preborn saves babies' lives through ultrasound. By letting a mother hear her baby's heartbeat and see her baby in the womb, she'll choose life 80% of the time. For $140, you can help save 5 babies' lives. All gifts are tax deductible, and 100% of your gift goes to saving babies. To donate, go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby.
Every baby deserves to be born.
Up next, Carol Swain with 2 minutes to think about it. From poverty to professor, from GED to PhD, a bold Christian speaking truth to power. Here's Carol with today's 2 minutes.
Hello, folks. Do you trust God to get you where you think you need to be in life? Or do you feel you have to make things happen for yourself? As a mover and shaker, I have spent a good portion of my years trying to get myself where I thought I needed to be. Along the way, I learned some truisms. The harder I strive towards a goal, the further it seems to slip away. When I relax and allow God to direct my path without any unnecessary interference from me, I see tremendous breakthroughs. God makes things happen that I could have never orchestrated. We know from Revelation 3:7-8, that the doors he opens no man can close, and the doors he closes no man can open. I've learned to pray, prayerfully set my goals, and watch for what God is doing. The hardest thing I have to contend with is not trying to help him do what I think he ought to be doing in my life. Trust me, God doesn't need us out front navigating the ship. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not to thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." He also tells us not to be wise in our own eyes. In other words, we're really not as clever as we think we are. We thrive and we grow when we have a healthy trust and a reverent fear of the Lord.
To learn more about Carol and the Carol Swain Foundation, visit carolmswain.net and make sure you follow her on Facebook at Professor Carol M. Swain and on Twitter at Carol M. Swain.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Look, if we sit here and we talk about this big concept of socialism, we debate what it actually means, all the polling that I've seen, when people go out state by state and ask what people care about, it's about the cost of health care.
Yes.
Right? That's what people care about.
Yes.
So if you can show up and you can say, I'm going to take care of the cost of health care, like that's a really powerful argument.
But you're getting into details and you're talking about a nuanced, powerful argument.
Yeah.
But lots of people don't get into the argument. They just go, oh my gosh, socialist, I can't have that. It's going to take all my money.
And I will tell you, if the entire Democratic Party gets branded as socialist successfully going into the midterms or into the 2020 presidential, depending on who takes that mantle, they lose.
Even
Period.
if those are winning policies,
Exactly.
it's such a difficult term.
Wow. So it's super difficult. And that's why it's the terms that make it so hard. It's not the fact that, socialism is horrible and everywhere it's been implemented, it's failed. Welcome to the program, everybody. Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Glad to be with you today. You're listening to Stephanie Rule and a panel of people over at MSNBC talking about it's Americans don't want to lose all of their money. It's not just about losing money. It's about losing your freedom. It's about losing your liberty. And there are some really great videos online. PragerU has one. A few other online hosts, YouTubers have done amazing work in videos. So there's no need of me doing a video about how awful socialism is. But there is a need for us as people who really respect capitalism and what it's been able to do here. And it's an imperfect system. Any system that involves human beings is going to be imperfect. And any system that we implement is going to have, you're going to have your pros and your cons. And if people take anything to an extreme, I mean, think about it. Drinking water is really good for you. But if you drink too much water, you can actually dilute the amount of blood that's in your bloodstream. Too much water, not enough blood, you can give yourself water poisoning and die. So any good thing can be taken to its extreme and it can become harmful or even deadly. Capitalism is the same. Unfettered capitalism without any philanthropy, without any kind of government incentives to get people to kind of rein in their desire to just earn a profit, it's no good. But the closest, best applications of socialism don't ever work out. Like the best socialism still never works. And when I say never works, it works in the beginning. And then as it really begins to work, it no longer works. The only reason socialist nations are able to keep up the facade of having socialism is, first of all, because they utilize a lot of capitalistic precepts within their government and within their societies that balance out the socialism. And the only reason that level of socialism is able to be maintained is because, of course, the supporters of it prop up the facade by not reporting on the bad parts. And the other thing is because America, we're everybody's policeman. I used to think it was so derogatory when people would say that. But the fact is, America, our military, serves as the military for a number of these other socialist nations. So much so that they're able to dance with socialism a little bit more than they would be able to if they had to foot their own military bills. If they had to stand their own military up and actually fund it and actually buy all of the equipment and hardware and train everybody and have all of the computer systems and everything else, the spies, the covert operatives, the whole nine, the agencies that go along with it, and the government sized up to take care of it, their socialism would burn to the ground. They use the money they would be using on their military to prop up their socialist programs. But don't take my word for it. One of my favorite authors, obviously, is Thomas Sowell, and he's written so many things about this. But I'm going to give you a few salient points about how socialism destroys economies and really kills people. And he talks about Venezuela. Now, interesting that I'd planned on talking about this today. In the news today, so Maduro, who's the head of the government down in Venezuela, was actually the subject of an assassination attempt when they had like some drones were flown over this event that he had. So you've got Maduro assembling his entire military, and the military is all formed up and, looking smart and snappy. And while he's doing that, and he's standing up there and he's speaking and looking quite rotund. I mean, I can't judge too hard because I'm not exactly skinny, but he looks like he's been eating well. Like that dude looks like he's been putting away a few steaks and stuff, and the shrimp and whatever the dishes are in Venezuela, he's not missing anything. His little military jacket is pulled tight almost to the bursting. And he's standing up there with his extra round face, pontificating in a foreign language, admittedly. I have no idea what he's talking about. And then apparently a drone flies overhead and bullets start flying. And then the military, which is assembled down below him, instead of them rushing up to the stage to kind of, protect him, they all just scatter. Like all of them, I don't even know if those were they military people or were they just people he found and gave them a full meal and, some money, and they put the uniforms on so we could have this display. Time will tell. But they just scatter. So the drones come overhead, they try to kill him, and when they realize they're under attack, all of the military members just scatter. So why did they do that? Why did they run away? Well, they ran away because they don't have any skin in the game. First of all, part of the reason our military force is so fantastic is because we have an all-volunteer military, which we can do because, as we've discussed many times, our government is outsized and we have fantastic pay. Well, I won't say fantastic. We have good pay and benefits for our military members, and we have other perks and benefits that we offer to them after the exiting of the service, like the GI Bill and things like that. And the training that you get on active duty in our military is so cutting edge and so phenomenal that it sets you up for a wonderful career doing something else in the private sector when you're done serving. And so, especially if you're coming from, you're not sure what you want to do after high school, and you actually went to high school and learned something, and you can pass the ASVAB or whichever military service test you're planning on going into, the military is a fantastic option in our country. So incomes in Venezuela have bottomed out. They don't have enough food. And remember, Venezuela's primary export, of course, was oil, but they were doing everything incorrectly, which is what happens when you have you have people in charge of your government and the finances of your country who they literally don't know addition from subtraction. They have no idea of how an economy works. So let's talk a little bit about this so-called rig system that Bernie Sanders was selling to us during his campaign. And he tried to sell it to those of us who are working and are, past our millennial years, if you will. But millennials who haven't yet had to work and then get that first couple of promotions and see that pay increase come in, and just before it hits their bank account, the government sucks most of it out. And that's when most people, they think, oh, wait a minute now. Maybe my allegiance to higher taxes and bigger government needs to give way just a tad, because I'm working and I've earned and I've got my education, or I've put the time in to get this promotion. They've given me the promotion, but I'm seeing very little of it because the government has jacked up my income tax rate and they're taking a ton of what I've just earned. That's when the rubber meets the road. So there's data, according to Thomas Sowell. In 2015, the 400 richest people in the world had net losses of $19 billion. And you might say, well, who cares? They were the 400 richest people in the world. They're billionaires. But the idea that they've rigged the system so only millionaires and billionaires can make it, that doesn't match up. In a rigged system, millionaires and billionaires, or the 400 richest people on the globe, do not lose money. In a rigged system, you rig it so you don't lose any money, right? So there's also the fact that socialism promises something that it cannot deliver, which is, you saw Bernie Sanders come out last week with this Medicare for all boondoggle that he says will solve the problem of people not having health insurance. And everyone will have the same thing, he says. But we won't all have the same thing. There's never going to be a situation in which every person has the exact same thing, whether it's health insurance or cars or houses or even family size. We will never, ever achieve true equality, because the very nature of human beings is that some human beings are always going to be willing to stay up late and never watch TV and work out an extra hour and a half a day, run an extra, miles, drink only smoothies 3 days a week, limit their diet to 1,200 calories so they can be super thin. There are always going to be people who are willing to stay up late at night and study and not watch television and not do recreational activities so that they can know more than everyone else at their workplace so they can be the boss. There's always going to be someone who is driven to do something, and they're willing to make the sacrifices to get it done, that will elevate them, their performance, above the other people in their same group, whether it's a work group, a bunch of people who go to lunch once a week, whatever. We'll never all have the same thing. And I'm glad, because I don't want the same thing as what everyone else has. Unless we're talking about liberty under the Constitution, my constitutionally guaranteed rights that are given to me by God, I'll take those the same as everybody else. Amen to that. But everything else, from how many children we decide to have or how often we decide to, go to the library, I'd rather have those things under my own individual control. And so you've got, a lot of different factors at play as to why socialism doesn't work. And you have to stop and think about why it doesn't work before you can go forward with the premise that it automatically will. And what we're being sold right now is this idea that socialism will work because Bernie Sanders says it will work. Well, ask Venezuelans how the socialism is working for them. Maduro said it would work. It's working really well for him. He's fat and also still has money. He's not eating zoo animals and domesticated pets for dinner. He's eating real food. He will always have what he needs because he has a military and armored tanks and guns and a limitless supply of ammunition to ensure that if there's anything they lack at the palace, they can go out amongst the people and find it and take it by force. The people, on the other hand, especially the ones who were trying to fly the drone attack, they're trying to wrest power back from him because they've now come to realize that socialism sounded wonderful but it's not working out for them. Their economy has collapsed. And oddly, Hollywood elites, the same ones who are selling socialism to us in between their, Marvel films, they're not coming to the aid of Venezuela. They're not flying down and doing an aid program for Venezuela. They don't have a We Are the World type telethon that they're planning. They don't even talk about Venezuela. They don't mention it on the news. And if you ask Bernie Sanders about it, he changes the subject. Because socialism in its true application is not what he's selling. He's selling the idea of socialism because that's what takes power away from his enemies who are busy peddling liberty and freedom, people on the right. And it's not that people on the right are perfect. That's not it at all. But I go by what the party platform says, because people are going to people. People are going to fail. People are going to mess up. People are going to not answer up to their promises all of the time. But if you have at least the rule of law and the Constitution, which says this is what has to be done, it's so much better than socialism, which just says hope, change. This is what we promise you, but there's nothing behind it to make them do it. If there was, Maduro down in Venezuela, he wouldn't be able to be fat. While on average, Venezuelans have lost, you just take the average, the average of what everyone has lost there in pounds, almost 30 pounds per person. Now, if a person was a little overweight, a little chunky to begin with, then, it's probably a welcome change, only it's not the diet they would have chosen. It's a forced diet. But if you're already thin and physically fit and you've lost 30 pounds, you're emaciated. These people are starving. And they're leaving the country in droves. Hundreds of thousands, over 200,000 people have left Venezuela. And the others who haven't left, I don't think it's an issue of they have a choice and they have somewhere to go. They just want to hang around. Some are hanging around because they love Venezuela and they want to stay in their own country. But most are staying because they have nowhere else to go. They don't want to take a chance somewhere else. Mexico doesn't sound good. They're not willing to leave. Or they can't leave. So there's also the issue of, obviously, we have a globalized economy. We have other nations that invest in our country. We have other businesses, international businesses that have parts of their companies in our country. And it moves towards socialism. They look so good on MSNBC coming out of Bernie Sanders or Ocasio-Cortez, because she's just, a media darling and everybody loves to listen to everything that comes out of her mouth. But business interests from around the globe don't want their businesses heavily invested in nations that practice socialism. The closer we get to the true practice of socialism, socialism mandates that the ownership of the means of production rest with the government. Can you imagine? Just think about the worst things that we're seeing with some of the businesses out there, whether it's Apple cracking down on Alex Jones, who honestly, he has really gone off the deep end with his conspiracy theories and all of that. But this news that they've shut down all of his podcasts and as if there's no good content coming out, as if the First Amendment does not apply, that does not inspire confidence. So while liberals are dancing in the street and they think it's so fantastic, wait until it's their turn. The pendulum always swings in the other direction. Socialism's horrible and we need to stay away from it. But we have to find a way to teach the millennials that, because they've been indoctrinated in school to think that socialism's fantastic. And we all know it's not. Just ask any Venezuelan. All right. When we get back, we're going to be listening to some audio from Kellyanne Conway. And, of course, we'll take some calls. Call lines are open, 866-963-2037. Stay there.
Hi, I'm Will Addison.
And I'm Miki Addison of Aaron the Addisons on Urban Family Talk. Family is so important to everything. I mean, think about it. Right after God created Adam, he made family by creating Eve as his wife.
We'd like to invite you to the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference this summer. We'll have a full slate of experts to help encourage and equip the body of Christ to fight for the restoration of the family.
Our speakers include Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation, Dr. Clarence Schuler of Building Lasting Relationships, Abraham Hamilton III, Pastor Bert Harper and his wife Jan, and more.
We'll even be there.
The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference will be Friday and Saturday, August 17th and 18th at Hope Church in Tupelo, Mississippi. Come help us fight back against the enemy's direct attack on marriage and family. That's the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference put on by Urban Family Communications, a division of the American Family Association. You can learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. There's a new slogan out. You are enough. It's the latest foray into convincing people that self-love is the pathway to freedom and success. This is just repackaged self-esteem nonsense of the same variety preached by secular thought leaders a few decades ago. Instead of going to church, we are encouraged to go to sporting events in huge stadiums on Sunday or stay home and read the newspaper. Instead of studying the Word of God, we're told to meditate on ourselves while holding crystals and humming. How ridiculous! Joy comes from knowing who we are in Christ. Philippians 2:3 says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves." So in essence, the opposite of everything we've heard. The meek will inherit the earth. Confidence comes from working hard and living a godly life. Instead of looking for self-esteem, look for God in his scriptures, in his creation, in serving people. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
Donald Trump's America.
President Trump spent the weekend at his golf course in New Jersey and on Twitter, where he blasted the Russia probe and the media. The president tweeted it's fake news that he's concerned about Donald Trump Jr.'s 2016 meeting with Russians in Trump Tower. The president's attorney, Jay Sekulow, got into it with George Stephanopoulos on ABC's This Week.
The question is, what law, statute, or rule or regulation has been violated? Nobody's pointed to one.
Well, they actually pointed to several, including conspiracy.
The president also tweeted the fake news hates him and suggested the media could even start a war. Fox News Sunday's Chris Wallace asked National Security Advisor John Bolton about that tweet.
Cause war, sick, divisive. This is taking it to a completely different level.
Well, that's the president's view based on the attacks that the media have made on him.
President Trump also wrote the meeting at Trump Tower was legal and done all the time in politics. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacey on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
But Margaret, you're a serious reporter. You've worked your way to the anchor seat at Face the Nation. You were a foreign war correspondent. The idea that you share an industry with the New York Times opinion writer who had racist tweets a couple short years ago, cancel white people, do they burn as quickly in the sun? Just really terrible things. And then, of course, Mark Caputo of Politico this week going to the rally in Tampa, and referring to Trump supporters as, quote, garbage people. If you put them all together, you have a full set of teeth.
I know you're sensitive to security
concerns. That's the state of journalism
because
today.
you've been the victim of some targeting, and I know you're sensitive to this. So can't you understand the difference, though? When the president escalates, that there is actually, at times, physical danger potentially, that there is a risk here, that the president may want to change that rhetoric.
The president wants people to give information, news they can use. And I got to tell you, there are a growing swath of reporters, all of whom, or most of whom I feel like I have a decent relationship with, that are sitting in the press briefing room who have contracts on cable TV where they say things, and they say things on Twitter they would not get away with in print. It would not pass even the most virulently anti-Trump editor's desk. And so I think those standards are much lower on Twitter for these journalists, certainly on TV. I've been talking about this for 2 straight years now since the campaign. I think the temperature needs to be dialed down overall.
And you don't believe that journalists are the enemy of the people?
I don't believe journalists are the enemy of people. I think some journalists are an enemy of the relevant.
Thank you.
And enemy of the news you can use. And I think that most of the sins are sins of omission, not commission.
Welcome back to the show. Stacey Washington, host of Stacey on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. So that was Kellyanne Conway speaking to Ms. Brennan about how, you know, this question that Jim Acosta posed, it's a straw man. It's a fake argument. It's a fake hill for them to stand on. So what do you do when the economy is, you know, banging on all cylinders and there's just everything is really what you were told couldn't happen is happening right before your very eyes. We were told by President Obama that we could not have GDP growth greater than 2%, that was the new normal. Get used to it. We were told by President Obama that manufacturing jobs couldn't come back to this country. Those are old jobs that need to be done away with and sent to third world nations, and all Americans are supposed to be in technology or food service. We were told by President Obama so many things that have turned out to be utter poppycock. At this point, if you believe that stuff still, I mean, you're just not reading the news. I'm sorry, for you. So when we hear these journalists, they don't genuinely believe that Americans believe they're the enemy of the people, but they're insulted and they're in their feelings, hashtag in your feelings, and they want to make sure that they get the comeuppance that they want from Republicans. And if the president is going to keep giving that insult, they're going to make the news story that he's insulting them and endangering their lives like they never got death threats before. They don't care when conservatives get death threats. They don't care when people literally say, I'm going to kill you, to people who are on the right. They don't care when Pam Bondi's chased down the street, or when conservatives are told to get out of restaurants, to get out of public, or when Maxine Waters calls for conservatives to be run out of public life. People who work for the Trump administration, anyone she doesn't like, Maxine Waters gets to decide who gets to be in public and who doesn't. None of that mattered. Now, President Trump said, you're the enemy of the people. And now every Republican within the sound of their voices needs to. So do you think we're the enemy of the people or no? And the only reason they wanted to have Kellyanne Conway on the show was to make sure she was on the record as saying, you're not the enemy of the people, because that contradicts Donald Trump and it further feeds this narrative and this story. He hasn't called for anyone to be harmed. He hasn't done anything nearly to the same degree as Maxine Waters and others have done. But that's the issue here. The issue is not that they're the enemy of the people. The issue is that they're reporting things that are not true. And when the media throws up that straw man, their only purpose is to make everyone get on the record bowing down to their whims. And right now their whim is, I need you to tell me that I'm not the enemy of the people. And you can't be like Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She's no good. She won't say it. Jim Acosta is actually on the record. I gave her every opportunity. He didn't give her anything. He was in the briefing room that she was in charge of. That was her room. That was her space. She allowed him to ask her the question. She was not required to answer it. See, he's got it all wrong. Jim Acosta thinks that the White House briefing room is the Jim Acosta briefing room. It's not. He didn't give her every opportunity. She allowed him to offer a question. She took the question. She answered it as she saw fit. He wanted her to repeat after me, say what I'm telling you to say. I want you to say to me that I am not the enemy of the people, that you disagree with your boss, that even though you are his mouthpiece and your job is to answer questions about his policies and what's going on in his administration, right now we want to hear you disagree with him. We want to hear you contradict him. We want you to give us your personal opinion about whether or not we are the enemy of the people. And I'm going to keep riding you until you do. And if you don't do what I tell you to do, woman, I, Jim Acosta, a man, I'm going to get up and walk out of this room like a stompy foot baby. And that's what happened. So when we hear this, we have to call it out for what it is. Now, I got nothing against Kellyanne Conway. I think she handled the interview well. She was in a tricky position. And when asked a question that you disagree with or you know the answer to, it's an easy answer, most people are going to answer. She's a pro at this. She's much better than most people who do this, certainly better than I am at going into these really negative media situations and handling her own and getting her message out there. I got no problem with what she did there. But I do have a problem with this idea that now every single conservative is going to have to come out and say, I don't think the media is the enemy of the people, thereby validating Jim Acosta and elevating him up to somebody who, I don't know, what I'm expecting now is for him to rent one of those fancy you know, those, it's almost like a trailer on wheels. It's better than a Winnebago. Work with me here. I'm talking about that big thing. You can sometimes see them on the highway when you're on long trips, but mostly you see them parked by the side of the road. It'll have the side let down, and it has a door. And when you go on it, it's almost like you think to yourself, did I just get onto what looks like kind of like a glorified bus? The inside is tricked out like a building. It's like he's going to buy one of those and set it up. It's going to have his picture on all four sides, and it's going to be Jim Acosta's room, and all the rest of us, all of America, all 312 million of us, but mainly media apparatus and Trump administration officials, will have to approach this bus or Winnebago and ask him questions, and then he'll get to tell us what to ask, and then he'll get to answer only what he feels like should be answered. So basically, we're just in his world. It's like a cartoon he's writing for himself and the rest of us. And we're all just, you know, we can't control ourselves. We're cartoon characters. We're just doing whatever he draws for us to do. I mean, why would any one of us want to validate Jim Acosta's ridiculous ranting by answering that question? Someone said, Joy Reid, it's Stalin used that term. And then some, you know, well-meaning Republican was like, well, it is language that is inappropriate to be used. You know what? Who just woke up here in this country where Donald Trump is president yesterday? Everyone who raised their hand, please just exit off to the side, because you need to become acclimated to the new normal. The new normal is that if you hit Donald Trump, he's going to hit you back magnitude of 10 times harder. That has been the situation since before he declared his candidacy for the presidency. Does it mean that I agree with everything that he says? Nope. Does it mean that he's going to change? Nope. Now his wife is out disagreeing with what he said about LeBron James being unintelligent or more intelligent than Don Lemon, but Don Lemon's not intelligent. His wife's out saying, well, that was kind of harsh. Are we thinking that at some point Donald Trump's going, oh, man, all right, I've had my fun. I'm just going to stop. No. That's New York brawler, born and bred. That's that one kid who got punched all the time on the playground and always got back up no matter what was going on with his face or his shoulder or his arm or anything like that. He would not stay down. That's Donald Trump. He's not going to stop punching people who punch him publicly with insults. And it's equal opportunity. He has savaged Rosie O'Donnell. You name it. He's just like gone on down the line. Anyone who has ever hit him publicly, he's hit them back. Reporting on it doesn't mean I agree with it or that I think it's right or proper or that I'm a fan of it. It just means that I'm a realist and I see what he's doing. And his point to insulting the media is not so much that he thinks they're truly the enemy of the American people, but the stuff they're reporting about him is false. Every bit of it? Nope. But there's just enough truth in there to make the lies seem plausible. He is trying to change America for the better. He's trying to right some wrongs, and he's trying to undo some of the garbage. I can't even call it diplomacy or policies or anything that President Obama put forward. It was just an absolute mess. And Donald Trump inherited it, and he's trying to fix it. And while he's working to fix it, he's got the media literally, they're okay with attacking his son, who's 12 or 13 years old. They're okay with attacking his wife when she's recuperating from a surgical procedure. They're okay with attacking the adult kids and the grandkids and anybody who ever worked with him and anybody who ever said his name and didn't snarl or spit when they said it. They're just out of control. And so he's escalating. So how about if the media just said to themselves, you know, we still don't like him. We still don't want him to be the president. But we are the fourth estate. And in order to preserve our legacy and to not have students in journalism class being taught not to do anything that we did during this time frame when Donald Trump was president and naming different fallacies and incorrect ways of doing journalism after us, like the Acosta method, don't do that. Instead of them trying to protect their legacies and their historical record by doing the job right, they're going to just devolve into the Acosta method, which is, I am the story. There is no story. I'm the story. That's Jim Acosta. You're not going to say what you think. You're not going to answer the question that I ask you the way you want to answer it. You're going to say what I tell you to say because I'm Jim Acosta. And I've already got my media people. They're going to do a story on me. They're going to bring my perspective to the print media. They're going to support me. So I don't have to have integrity. I don't have to genuinely treat you with respect because you're the press secretary. I don't have to act like this is your room and I'm in it because I'm a member of the White House press corps. No, I'm going to act like a big overgrown baby and you're going to take it because I've got other media people at my back and you don't have anybody. You're under attack because we hate you. We hate your makeup. We hate your face. We hate the way you look. Just look at what they've written about Sarah Sanders. Totally unprofessional. Complete lack of ethics. That's the way they treat her. And she still stands in front of them every single day. Instead of shutting down the on-camera briefing and just giving the briefing to them live without the benefit of cameras. No, she's still in there doing that thing like that. I would have all been shut down the cameras. I would have been like, yep, we're going to have the meeting in this space, but there will be no cameras. Watch how they would calm down if she did that. Because they're grandstanding, because they have contracts that they need to fulfill. They have news that they need to make. And they're not talking about making news about 4.1% GDP or millions of new jobs total in 18 months. They're not talking about all of these different metrics that are really, it's like taking the temperature of a human being and then checking their pulse oxygen level and then checking to see if, you know, their reflexes are working and feeling the lymph nodes and all of the different things that the doctor takes you through when you go to see your internist for your once-a-year checkup, or if you show up and you're sick. First thing they do is they try to assess just your normal functions. Are these within the parameters? And then they go to what's wrong with you. And so the normal parameters for our country are that we have GDP greater than 2%. That's when we're healthy. 2% means we got to look at a few other, like we need to maybe take some blood. We need to check and see what's going on here, because 2%, that's kind of anemic. You need some iron in your diet. You need to be eating more eggs. You need to be getting outside and getting more walks, get some sun. You need to get more rest. Lay off the carbs. Stop laying around watching TV and eating at the same time. Get up, be active during the day, and then get your good solid 8 hours of sleep at night. Cut your stress levels. The same things a doctor will say to you as a person. When we talk about 4.1% GDP, that's a healthy country. When we talk about jobs being created, not jobs lost, that's a healthy country. Jobs coming back to this country, healthy. Eliminating these deals, the Paris Climate Accord, the Iran deal, taking the temperature abroad, making sure that Americans are first. That's healthy. Donald Trump is bringing these metrics back and putting the nation back in a state of health. And these reporters won't talk about it. They want to talk about Jim Acosta and his feelings. Of course, Donald Trump is going to go at him hard. They're not doing their jobs. Sorry. Don't get mad. Just understand it and move on. We'll be back with more after this.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family